I've worked with domestic violence offenders in jails who are serving time in America. We have very strict rules about domestic violence now that we didn't used to have laws. And so, and there's a program in the LA County Jail where we were. So it's a similar thing. And being able to look at your own judgmental programming and look at how much of your pain is being caused by you projecting your feelings onto that victim. A lot of what we feel, it's not that we don't feel compassion for things like that. Believe me, that's not what I mean. But a lot of the suffering that we have about things like that has to do with our own experience of victimhood, which is also something that can be worked on and more deeply healed. Therefore, when we are not the victim, what we see is more clearly the two individuals that are having that circumstance. Or if it's an animal, it's another conversation. But still, the unconsciousness. For example, in working with the domestic violence offenders, having gone through as much healing as I did growing up with that, with my stepfather, beating my mother, and being helpless around that, and all of those feelings of helplessness and hopelessness and fear and dread and all of that, whatever. There's a lot of that programming that just gets stimulated when we see, for example, seeing a mother yelling at her child in a parking lot outside of a toy store. With just, what could that 2-year-old had possibly done to deserve that kind of a reaction, right? It's that same kind of thing. I'm a vegetarian, you think about how animals are treated. How could but when I investigate when I take my own medicine and I come back and ask myself, what is hurting me? One of the things that I recognize is that I am judging that person, and judgment and the fear of that ever happening to me and the old pain of what I remember has happened to me is all involved in my response to that. So I'm not clear about what those people would even need if I did have the opportunity to help them change, because I'm projecting my stuff onto them. And the more you become clear about how to heal your reactions to things, the more compassion you'll have, the more intelligence will flow through that compassion, and you'll be able to see what you can do to be more constructive to help the outside world change if you even need to.
Okay, that's a great answer. Absolutely love what you have to say there. Debbie from Toronto in Canada is saying, I attended your introduction workshop in Toronto in July, and I want to thank you, Lindsay. It has made me focus on positive things and while I go through my chemo treatments. My question is, how do I stay focused as I find sometimes the bad things coming through in my thoughts while I try and focus on the positive things? Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, so that's where the other techniques come in for me. We didn't have time to go into the the tapping. There's one thing about staying focused on positive, but I feel that sometimes that so-called positive thinking can also kind of take us away from the acceptance of a present truth. And so some of the work that we do in the workshops is looking at and not being afraid to experience the pain that we are experiencing, but not get mesmerized by it. It is my experience that it does not cause it to continue if we're just experiencing it in a high place, to allow it to move through. In other words, if you just cannot experience, you can't stay focused on a positive thought, and you have this fear whether it will work or not. Let's say, if you fear that the chemo will work or not, recognize that you have that thought and allow yourself to just resonate with the fear and acknowledge that it's only a thought, that it's only a program in you. It's not inherent truth. And I think in that workshop we did, if I remember correctly, can you write back? Can they write back again?
Yeah, yes, I can. Debbie, would you mind, if you're still listening, write straight back, please? And
I want to ask you if we did in that workshop did we have the meditation cards, and were those two statements about accepting one's faults, problems, and limitations give strength and ability of love to love? Did we do that exercise there?
Okay, so we're going to await Debbie's response. In the meantime, let's take Julia's question. Julia's from Vancouver in Washington. Julia's saying, hi, Lindsay, do you believe that people are able to communicate through telepathy of some sort? Are we able to form some sort of link through our connectedness to others?
Telepathy, sure. Telepathy is quite real. And I think there's lots of scientific research even that backs all that up and perhaps even explains a lot of it. Perhaps Konstantin would know that a bit more than I as far as that type of thing, if you're interested in that kind of an explanation. And can we develop it? Yes, there are ways to develop it. I've never personally focused on developing my telepathy where I know other people have, but